This is how you tear apart a 2JZ engine. Now it is worth noting that I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. I just ripped apart an engine with the tools I had laying around. So if you damage your engine after watching this video, I'm sorry, but kind of not, because this is your warning. And alright, let's get started. First, you want to spin the engine to top dead center. Make sure the cam gears align as well. Next, you want to pull off the VVTi gear. Start by getting this nut here. Then you can get to the actual nut that's holding the gear in place. Afterwards, you can now do the exhaust side cam gear. Next, you want to move down to loosen the crank timing chain or timing belt tensioner. After that is loose, you can pull your belt off. Now remove the bolt holding the VVTi gear in all the way. Next up, you want to move the VVTi solenoid, and now you can remove the gear. But for whatever reason, the VVTi cam gear was stuck on so tight I couldn't get it off with my hands. So I decided to move on to removing the back plate behind it instead, while I tried to come up with an idea of how to remove it. At this point, I was starting to feel a little bit desperate, so I tried to pry it off with a screwdriver. Then I just tried hitting it with the screwdriver. It was just flipping stuck on there. After watching Stefan Papadakis from Papadakis Racing pull it off with his bare hands, I decided to use a pry bar because, well, what else was I supposed to do? But after using the pry bar for a little bit, I found that that just wasn't going to work, and I didn't want to damage the gear, so I dropped that idea entirely. So then I got the idea of putting a socket inside to push against the camshaft, and then screwing the cap on top of that, and it actually worked pretty good and pushed the cam gear off. Next, I could remove the last bolt holding that plate in place. After that was removed, the next step was to start pulling off the camshaft. Now you really need to be careful with this. There's a specific order that you need to pull off the cam caps. First, you want to check the camshaft to see which lobe is pushing down on a bucket or a spring. Once you figure out which one that is, you want to make sure to unscrew the caps off from the outside inwards towards that one lobe that's pushing down on a spring. If you don't do this right, you could risk breaking a camshaft, so just be very careful. Now, I just broke these loose, but if you wanted, you could remove each one individually without breaking them all loose at the same time. I also needed to use a screwdriver to get off the cam cap that's on the front of the cam, because that was sealed in to prevent oil from leaking out. After that, you can now loosen the last cam. Now this scared me a little bit, because once I got it loose to a certain point, the cam actually shifted, making a loud noise, and I had worried I had broken it. But it turned out that everything was fine, and I just moved on. Once that last cap is removed, you can remove the camshaft. Next up is to do the intake cam. Same thing, find the lobe that is pushing down on the bucket and make sure that you do that one last, moving from the outside in. This time I decided to move the front cam cover first, the one that the VVTi solenoid goes into. This one has 2 extra bolts holding in place, so you need an Allen wrench to get those out. Once again, after I got those out, I carefully used a screwdriver to pry it up and pulled it off. Now you can start unbolting the cam caps, moving from the outside towards the middle. Carefully remove those. Now you can do that last cam cap. Once again, the cam popped a little bit, but this time I was ready for it and it didn't scare me. And now you can remove the cams. I also like to keep my stuff organized, put it in the order I pulled it out in. Now you can remove the head bolts. So in order to remove these, you actually need this special tool called a triple square. It's kind of like a Torx bit, but with extra splines. What you do is you get the triple square, you put it on top of the bolt, and then you put a 13mm socket over the top of it. At first, I was trying to use my torque wrench to remove it, but I found that that just wasn't long enough, so I swapped it out for a breaker bar. I just went around, loosening them all one by one, and removed all of them. The last thing holding the head in place is the water pump, and in order to remove that, you have to remove the timing chain tensioner pulley. So I did that, it's just a single bolt. Now you can start loosening all the bolts on the water pump. Just go around, loosen them all up, and now remove them. Next up, there was one bolt holding a bracket that was connected to a water line. Just unscrewed that. And now I can almost pull off the water pump. There are two more bolts holding it up top to the head. You just unscrew those. It's one. That's two. And now you can pull off the water pump. But I just remembered something, so screw that water pump back in. There's a connector that is connected to the water pump that you have to unscrew. It's the crankshaft timing sensor, so just pull that out. And now you can unscrew that last bolt and remove the water pump assembly. Now you can remove the head. Carefully grab it and lift it straight up. There you go. You know what? I was very confused initially when I saw this, because if you look closely, you'll notice, well, you don't even have to look closely, just look at it. There is no deposits or wear on the entire inside of this engine. So I went ahead and reached out to the owner, and it turns out that that engine had been rebuilt but then never run. And unfortunately, the valve clearance had been off, according to the previous owner, so the valves had actually made contact with the cylinders, causing them to bend. So unfortunately, my camera ran out of memory at this point, so I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what I did to completely strip down the block. First, I removed the rod caps and pulled out the pistons one by one. Then I went ahead and removed the crankshaft timing belt gear, then the oil pump, then the rear main seal. After that, you could remove the main caps and the main bearings, and then the crankshaft would come out. Before I conclude today's video, I want to announce that in my next video, I will be revealing what this engine is going to be used for. It is a very exciting build. I am so excited to share it with you guys. It will take up most of the content of my channel for the next few months, so stay tuned for that, and thank you so much for watching this video.